raising money is really, really easy. It is super easy. What's hard is getting smart money, finding the right partners and the right money. You do, like what the last thing in the world you want is some rich dude that's investing in your brand because the cool name and you were a SEAL.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, man, my partner's a SEAL. And then he sits at your board meetings like this with his hand out. When do I get my money back? But he doesn't offer anything. It's one thing to like ask questions about like, when you get your money back. But if you're not bringing in anything to the table, like raising smart money and putting the right people on your board, that's all that matters. Nothing else matters.
You're listening to the Born Primitive podcast. So today we actually have an in-house guest, our second one ever, which is awesome. Usually we're obviously doing these remote. We have Baker Leavitt here. Baker is the Director of Strategic Relations at Black Rifle Coffee. He also started the company Tupood, which most of our viewers are aware of. Partner at Killcliff, an investor at Figure AI and Protect. Also dabbles in helping a lot of startups raising money. So the last couple of years, he's helped raise about $15 million for startups. Kind of what appears to be a serial entrepreneur. We'll get into this, but big real estate investor and kind of lost his ass back in 2008 when that thing happened. So fascinated to get into that. But friend of mine, he's helped Born Primitive out and has kind of helped connect us in various inroads to different communities. So call you a friend and thanks for everything. But more importantly, glad to have you in studio and welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, man, happy to be here. I've been wanting to do this podcast for a while.
And yeah, since you're in town, it's a no-brainer.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But so there's a lot I want to get into. Obviously the Killcliff angles is in Tupood, like that's as endemic to CrossFit as it gets. But then Black Rifle, how you got involved with that. But maybe let's go back a little bit. Kind of what got you into being kind of a serial entrepreneur in the early days, and I guess take us to 2008. I know a lot of people over-indexed and then got their ass handed.
Fast track before this. So there's things happen in people's lives that kind of lead them down the path. So my father passed away in 1981. I was 5 weeks old. I was 5 years old. My brother was 8 weeks old. My mom was in grad school. And my mother, she just said, I always wanted to raise myself. And she just didn't have the strength to fight me, so she just let me. And I think that kind of is where my entrepreneurial spirit started. It's like I just thought I could do things my way. And as long as I got the result, like if you give me A to work with and you want C, A plus B equals C. Don't ask me about B. That's the black box theory, because I don't necessarily know how I'm going to do it. But as long as I'm getting C and getting that desired output, I think goal's been achieved. But so I grew up in Savannah, Georgia, playing sports like most kids in the South. Really good high school football player. Always the fastest guy on the field, and was good enough to get to a college football team. Was not good enough to play. I played a few plays here and there, but excuse me, not a ton. I learned on the third day. You have a lot of guys. I'm sure you cross paths with guys that you played with growing up. Like, man, I should have given it a shot. And you're just like, you weren't really good enough. You didn't miss out on anything. The skill set wasn't there. But I learned on the third day, like you hear guys say what might have been. I realized on day 3 of summer camp what was not going to be. And that was my trajectory as a collegiate football player. It wasn't in the cards. And I learned that like I was still like the fastest guy on the field. But this is like second huge life lesson. It's like when you're the fastest guy on the field, you don't really have to learn the plays. And you don't have to understand the X's and O's. Just get the ball and make shit happen. And when you get to a higher level, when you advance to different levels in life, things get complicated because you went from being 10 steps faster than everybody to get to college. Now you're like 3 steps faster than the next fastest guy, but they know everything, how the game's played. And you're just like, man, what in the hell's going on? It was very eye-opening for me. Played at Middle Georgia for 2 years, and then I transferred to the University of Georgia, and then graduated in 2000. First job, I did 4 summer internships out in San Francisco for different investment banks. My aunt was an investment banker. I did, and that was also another really, really big eye-opening thing. Around a bunch of Ivy League guys,
easy now.
Yeah.
Well, they were like Bank of America Securities.
No, totally, yeah.
This is when Nations Bank and Bank of America merged, and it was Montgomery Securities, Montgomery Bell, and then Nations Bank and Bank of America Securities, and I worked for Tom Weisel Partners. And I just remember seeing financial statements. And like, this is going to make me sound like a D-bag, but like I went to private school my whole life. Got a car when we turned 16. College was paid for, all that stuff. So I hate using the word privilege, but like I kind of, family was pretty successful. And I thought that like where I came from and my family and my friends' families all were really successful until I got to San Francisco and started, this is in late 1990s, folding financial statements and the zeros that you saw. And that changed everything for me because at that point I was like, I'm going to go to Georgia. I'm at Georgia. I'm going to graduate. I'm going to go home and work for my family's real estate company, Black Investments. And I'm going to make $100,000 and I'm going to be the richest, baddest son of a gun on the planet. And then like I get out to San Francisco and I was just like, oh my God.
Like there are levels to this.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah. Yep.
And another funny story, I remember like when you're an intern at an investment bank, like they have these morning calls and meetings and all the interns have to go just to put bodies in seats. There was a partner in this firm. This guy was probably he was a partner through 2 acquisitions, older gentleman. He was probably worth a couple $100 million. And I'm sitting there, this little hayseed from Georgia, and he's right in front of me. And I'm looking at his head. And there was, remember, the snaps for football helmets?
Yeah.
Right in the back of his head. And I was like, what in God's name is that? And I was like, dude, that's a snap for a hairpiece. Holy shit. Like this super rich dude is wearing a wig. And that's when, and I was kind of like, okay, so like no matter how much money you have or how wealthy you or successful you are, like people still have insecurities. That was another really interesting life lesson. But
was the snap supposed to be exposed? Or
no,
You let it slip.
Did you do him a solid? Be like, hey, sir,
You got a snap hanging.
it took everything in my power not to just reach forward and unclip or just give it a snap. But so interned out there, had some early exposure to like high level success, high level business. This is like the .com bubble.
Yeah, this is big league ball.
Yeah,
yeah.
And this is so I did 4 summer internships out there because it took me 5.5 years to graduate college because I actually lived out there. I took a quarter off and worked out there. I just remember thinking like, not everything always makes sense. Like, and you don't have to have a Harvard MBA or a partner in this prestigious investment bank to like ask questions or see things that don't necessarily make sense to you. So like I remember when crawfish.com went public and I was sitting on the trading desk and I was like, what does this company even do? And I think it jumped up to like $80 a share. And I was just like, I don't understand this. And then the .com bubble burst.
And when did that happen? When did the burst happen? Was that early 2000s?
No, dude. That was the late 1990s.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Which kind of ties into, so that's late 1990s. So 1998, 1999.
Yep.
So we'll put a waypoint there.
Okay.
And we're going to fast forward to 2008, every 10 years.
Yep.
So graduated Georgia, moved to Key West for 6 months, worked on a dive boat. Just to take some kind of time off and do something kind of silly. And
that was epic.
No, it wasn't. Not at all, man. I learned that Key West is the furthest place in the continental United States you can go without leaving the country. What does that attract? People running from the law, taxes, alimony, child support, parking tickets, whatever. And I was like, that's the only time in my life I worked for South Point Dive Shop and I had a job at the Meteor at night, which is the greatest barbecue restaurant that's ever lived. Like, my mouth's watering thinking about how good this stuff was. The ribs were amazing, and I'm not even a big rib guy. I got fired from the Meteor for outworking everyone. The day before, the manager, she was like, and the owner was from Minnesota. They're like, God, you are unbelievable. Like, what are you doing here? I was like, no, I just graduated, a few months ago. I'm just kind of taking a couple months off, hanging out, just, do whatever. And they were like, you're the best employee I've ever had at any business I've ever owned. And this guy was like a pretty well-to-do dude from Minnesota that owned a bunch of businesses. And I was like, oh my God, like that made my day, and I got fired the next day. And I was like, you just told me like I was the best employee you've ever had. He's like, yeah, but everyone else hates you because you make them look bad. And I was like, that's not cool. That's not cool at all, man. So that kind of empowered me how do I phrase this? I've always had a very high opinion of myself, but at that moment, I knew I was better than a lot of people. That sounds shitty to say, but like I just kind of like, okay, I lost a job because I was too good, but I'm never going to like throttle it back. So then I still working at the dive shop and got a job on a parasail boat, which was super cool. That was fun. It was great. I'm a ginger and actually had a tan. I have like, for those listening, I have the complexion of a jellyfish. All right. And I remember 3 weeks later, I was sitting there on the edge of my bed in my little 1-room apartment. And I just called my mom and said, I'm coming home. I'm done with this place. And I put my comforter on the floor, threw all my stuff in it, and bundled it up, and then shoved it in the trunk of my little BMW 318i and drove back to Savannah, Georgia. And I got home, grew up around real estate. My family, my great-grandfather was a gentleman by the name of W.R. Altman, who's a legendary, amazing businessman, like superstar. Dropped out of high school in 8th grade. When he died, I think he owned, it was like 30,000 acres total. I mean, just to buying Coke stock, door-to-door, penny a share. My grandfather, rest in peace, was not the same caliber of individual, but they owned a bunch of shopping centers. And you'll hear me say from time to time, like, success is super easy to copy because we all know this. We all know the blueprint to success. We've seen it. We see it every day. But the true blueprint to success is the failures. And I watched my grandfather and my uncle, whom I love dearly, do a bunch of dumb stuff. And I was always like, why not just replace the entire roof instead of paying $5,000 a month to patch it? It just, some of that, but my grandfather grew up in a depression, you know? And I was like, well, I don't want to work with them because I think I'm smarter than them. And we had this real estate firm, and I don't mean to sound like an asshole, but I am. Corbett Thomas Realty. And it was like super high end in Savannah, like the big homes downtown and like the big waterfront stuff. And I was just like, I want to work there. Cause like they all had like nice cars and they dressed really nicely. And it wasn't like what you would think like a stereotypical like realtor would be like. They were sophisticated, so it seemed. So I called my Uncle Jerry, who's a massive, massive real estate attorney in that area. And I was like, Jerry, can you put in a good word for me with Corbett? Do you know her? He's like, of course, everybody does. Jerry calls Corbett and it's like, hey, my nephew wants a job. She's like, send him down. So I go and I interview and I get the job. They hire me. All right, get to work. What does that mean? Like, what do you mean get to? She's like, hey, sink or swim, buddy. And I was like, all right. So Savannah, Georgia, where I grew up, is the largest historic district area-wise in the United States of America. All right. And the Victorian district, there was just this is in like 2002, and it was still super, just areas that were just dilapidated and run down and just hadn't been renovated and all that stuff. Because the real estate boom hadn't kicked off. All right. So .com bubble, 1998, 1999. Everyone remember that. So I got in my car and I drove around the crappiest parts of downtown Savannah and just wrote letters to property owners and said, hey, I have a client that's interested in your property. That wasn't true, but I just wanted to get him on the phone. And when you're in sales, the goal, everything that you do, there's one purpose, and that is to advance the sale. Every conversation, every action, every movement, even if you're moving it forward a millimeter, advance the sale. I started in February of 2002. Late February. I finished that year. I led the entire company in listings. Now, a lot of those were crack houses and rundown, boarded up shacks. And it led to a ton of business. My first, I made like $56,000. And my second year, I made 105, and then it just kept going on and on. But what I learned, because they were always like, why are you listing these shit properties? And I was like, well, they're listings and they're getting signs up and it makes the phone ring. And another thing, I would take floor duty whenever anyone would offer it up. Floor duty is when you're like the agent on duty and someone walks in or calls. Like, dude, I think I did floor duty AM and PM, morning and afternoon sessions for like one time 14 days in a row. Because I was just like, I mean, the one thing I know I can do is just outwork people. Yeah. They have way more experience, but like as long as I stay on this treadmill and I don't get off, I'm going to win. And what I learned from listing all those dilapidated, junky properties was like, I learned that market better than anyone. And what I also learned was how to like assess value and potential and where things were getting renovated and stuff. So, bought a house, my primary residence, $85,000 on 52nd Street. And then I bought like a Section 8 house, like in the ghetto. I'm talking like deep. And then from there, I bought a duplex and a fourplex. And then from there, I bought a 12plex, another duplex. And then the main drag in downtown Savannah is a street called Broughton Street. And I came across 3 buildings that were $3.5 million just for the residential floors, not the commercial. And I went to a buddy of mine who I went to college with, Reed Brennan, who was working with a guy named Nick Applegate. I was like, hey, man, we can buy these buildings and do condo conversions in them. And then it was just off to the races. So we paid $3.5 million for those 3 floors. And then we bought 5 and 15 West Broughton Street for $6.5 million. It's 28 years old. What bank in America is lending 3 guys? Nick was 30, Reed was 26, I was 28, $6.5 million unsecured. I mean, the real estate obviously secured it, but
How much were you having to put down?
we put down 10%.
10%.
But we had another 10 or 20% in the account to do renovations and stuff.
Okay.
And we basically pre-sold everything.
And were you leveraging equity on your other properties
No.
to pay your down payment?
No
you
doc
weren't.
loans, bro.
Okay. Okay. So, but only 10% down. That's for people that don't do this. That's low for an investment property, a commercial property.
Unrenovated, not even white box.
Yeah. That's, you know, what I mean,
Historic property.
Yeah.
No electricity. I mean, just, it was insane.
and what year was this?
2005.
Okay. So there's foreshadowing here.
Now, we
We'll get
just
to-
got
yeah,
out of the
yeah, yeah.
dot-com bubble, all
Yeah.
right? And that, dude, it was awesome. And so, and then I just started acquiring rental properties just nonstop and making a killing. I think the entire real estate portfolio was about $15 million that I had. And everybody remembers Too Big to Fail, Lehman Brothers, all that stuff. And then the market started going sideways.
Is this like late 07?
The writing was on the wall.
late 07, yeah, early 2008.
Yeah, and there's another valuable lesson.
And what were you seeing? What was the writing on the wall?
So if you,
I was too busy like funneling beers in college at this point, so I was not that worried about the housing market.
I was still funneling beers. I just wasn't in college.
There you go.
So I knew that 5 and 15 West Broughton Street, we shouldn't have done it. Oh, and it was too much. Coward's not the right word, but I was too big of a coward to speak up because my ego, and I had this ad campaign that won several Golden Addy Awards. Baker knows Broughton. Broughton Street was the main road. And I'd sold more buildings and lofts and stuff on Broughton Street than anybody in town. Baker knows Broughton. And then I did a second campaign with Baker is Broughton after watching Blades of Glory and Chaz Michaels is figure skating. I was like, I called my ad guy Michael at South Magazine. I was like, change the ad to Baker is Broughton. So we started a company called ABL Lofts. And it was me, Reed Brennan, and Nick Applegate. And this is all, I mean, we had 2 projects, and there was commingling of funds taking place, not stealing money, not trying. And I never signed a check. I was not involved in any of the construction stuff. But it's like young dudes that just were trying to keep projects afloat. And like, it was the same investors, but it was 2 different, so there was like, and then the money started to dry up. And then all this was financed through private banks in Georgia, community banks.
Mm-hmm.
And during the real estate crash, Georgia had the state of Georgia alone had more private banks closed than the rest of the country combined. I think Georgia had like 158 banks. Darby Bank didn't make it through there. First Chatham got bought by Bank South. Bank South had problems. So it's called commercial paper, and you have to renew commercial paper every 12 months. And so the writing was on the wall, and the interest rate started going up. So then
your hurdle rate.
you got to refinance,
Yeah.
or you got to renew. But
Yeah.
then they're looking at like loan to value ratio, how many units are under contract. They're not advancing money on the construction of the projects. The loss were over $500,000. You couldn't get FHA approval on the loan. So the only person that could buy a loft in 5 and 15 was a cash buyer.
Yeah.
And it's
cash
like,
is
dude,
king.
I was 32 years old at the time, and I was taking, and my investors were all surgeons. I was 30 or 32, taking, carrying the note on these projects by myself. No help from my partners, no help from my investors. Because it was like, I was like, what else? I was terrified. And like ego got in the way a lot too, pride. Because like when you're on the top of the mountain and like everyone's like, oh, you're the man, like you want to keep that going. So I was too much of a coward to like kill the 5 and 15 West deal before we closed. And then and everybody else ended up paying for it. You know, everyone made mistakes. I mean, we had investors that like sued everybody. I mean, like sued the title companies, sued everything. I mean, it was insane. It was chaos. It was so chaotic that it wasn't chaotic. It was just like, can it get any worse? And like, you know, the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. You know, a 13-year-old breaks up with a girlfriend or boyfriend in school and it's the end of the world for them. Adults laugh it off. Oh, they're just kids. Well, they are kids, but nothing like this has ever happened to them before. So how you deal with those things, like what I learned, and so I lost a $15 million real estate portfolio. I lost everything I had. I had an annuity that paid me $5,000 a month for the next 16 months. That's all I had. I lost everything. So I felt sorry for myself for about 48 hours. And I was like, this is not going to accomplish anything. This is so stupid. And my brother, Mitchell, he had just started medical school. So Mitchell was a Force Recon Marine, and he was just starting medical school. He was like, you should go SF. Because 3 of his buddies from his Force Recon team got out of the Marine Corps, joined and I might butcher this, so forgive me. They joined the National Guard and did a program, I think it's called Rep 63 or Rep 62 or something like that, where you go straight into Special Forces selection. And like at this point, like I'd lost everything. And like, I was like, the thought of money disgusted me. And the thought of money, working for money, like I was like, my life's over. You know, like I'm never going to be happy again. Like I have ruined everything. And so I was like 15 miles away from like Camp Blanding, and the guy called. He said, "Hey man, like you have an inguinal hernia and your shoulder is completely shot. You're not going to pass MAPS." And I was like, "Well, I'm going to do something. I got to do something." So I started going through the Defense Foreign Service Agent program, and I was like 2 stages into the interview process, and I was like, "Well, if I have language and medical, someone's going to pick me up, and you know, there's some government agency." Like Jason Bourne type thing will call me because I'm a badass, and like that's how this works, right? You know, and so I was like, I'm gonna go get a master's degree in Arabic at NYU. So I felt sorry for myself for 48 hours, and then I was like, no, I'm better than this. You know, and I started thinking about when I got fired at the Meteor in Key West. I was like, I'm not gonna let people beneath me bring me down to their level and tear me down. Like I'm destined for not greatness, but like I'm destined for more. This is just one little chapter in my life. I'm not going to let this define who I am. So, dude, 3 weeks later, I'm in New York City, and I was never a good student. Like I was like, my brother's a surgeon now. Mitchell graduated last in his class in high school. I graduated second to last. We hated school. I hated school. Aptitude off the charts, but like I just was never a good student. The only class like at Georgia, barely graduated, horrible grades. I was there for networking and hanging out and girls and booze and recreational drug use and all that crazy stuff like everybody else. And I get to New York. I have never in my life, I swear to you what I'm about to tell you is true. I have never in my life worked harder than trying to learn Arabic. First one in class, front row seat. Stayed late, hung out. Whenever I'd get in cabs, I'd try to engage. If I had an Arabic speaking cab driver, I'd go to the falafel stands. I went above and beyond. There's no person on this planet that can study and put in more work than I did. Like, dude, I walked around with like notes, like a little moleskin book where I would just go over it constantly. And I couldn't learn it. And I remember sitting in class one day and they were going over something. And I was like, when did we talk about this? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What is this? And then I was like, the CIA is testing me. That's what they're doing. The CIA is going to come in the room and be like, hey, this was a test. You passed. You're coming to work with us.
You're going to the farm.
That never happened. Like, Camp Perry, here I come, bro. Like, I was like, that's the only thing that makes sense. That was August. And I remember my first night in New York. I had a Range Rover that got towed. That's what I drove. And it got towed. And I was like, as punishment, I'm going to walk to the impound lot, which was down on one of the piers 80 blocks away. And I remember I got like 2 blocks in, and I just remember looking around, and I thought, every single person here, no one here cares about my problem. I could be walking down the road with my privates hanging out, and no one would care because they all have their own things to deal with. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be all right. Fast forward, school, studying my butt off, and then Tony Zana and I crossed paths, and we started Tupood in December of 2010. All right, so 1998, dot-com bubble. 10 years later, housing bubble. Every 10 years, we have something that happens that the country never learns its lessons from. So, started Tupood and just got to work through CrossFit and stuff. I went to CrossFit Virtuosity in Brooklyn and just started going to events and stuff. And like, I'd take like a little like Tupperware container of like shorts that we had made in Shaklot, Pakistan. All right. And I would just drive around to events and all that stuff and just sell them out of the back of my car. Like Ludacris would sell CDs. I would sell Tupood apparel. And like went funny because in January, I remember I flew down to Georgia and went to the Garage Games, which was run by CrossFit Woodstock. And that was the first time I ever laid eyes on my wife, Melissa. Didn't speak to her, but I just thought, good God, that chick is hot. And then,
as you stood from afar, terrified to go approach her.
Well, she had a ring on.
Oh, shit. Okay.
God, she had on black Lulus and a red top and was just a smoke hammer. And then fast forward to May the 27th of 2011. That's the first time I ever talked to her because it was the Southeast Regionals. And she was working the Sick Fit booth and I was working the Two Fit booth. And like, I was like, my God, she didn't have a ring on. And then I got into a long-term relationship. We'll get to that in a second. But anyway, so in January, so that's December, Tupood starts. And then Killcliff, I joined Killcliff. We started Killcliff in early, in March of 2011. And what was fascinating was like Tupood, like that was the early days of CrossFit, and like the sport of. Mm-hmm. And I was like, sponsor guys, like Nate Schrader and Brent Phillips, and sponsored a bunch of like these OG guys. And I remember Tupood took off. And what I learned with Tupood was I had an existing customer base. So we started Tupood with like, I think $17,000. And CrossFit embraces or it banishes things. Mm-hmm. You're either in or you're out.
Well, it used to at least.
Yeah, and when it mattered.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember
now you can buy your way in.
Absolutely. And I remember that's what I learned about mobile customer bases. So it's like if these items exist on the same aisle of the grocery store, proverbial speaking, if they like Tupood, they're gonna like Killcliff. Mm. And so I learned about mobile customer bases. Yep. But yeah, then everything that was just a wild ride. We ended up selling Tupood. I drove all over this country. I've been to every regional in my Subaru Outback, like every regional. Been to the games multiple times, and a lot of great memories. We were Rich Froning's first sponsor.
And when did you guys sell?
2018.
Okay. Was it like a PE firm or?
No, it was a dude out of Austin, Texas, who had sold a tech company.
Yeah,
like 32.
Okay.
And his wife and his daughters were like, "You're too young to be retired, and you're driving us crazy. Get out of the house and go do something."
Yeah.
And I was living in San Antonio at the time with Black Rifle, and I remember I was sitting in my sauna, and my partner, Tony Zani, was like, "Hey, this dude's coming in to buy Tupood on Thursday. I'm going to send you some documents. I want you to sign them and get them back to me." I was like, whatever, sure. Yeah. Because I always thought this is such a dumb name.
Did you guys make out pretty well? Are
yeah.
you able to talk financials?
Yeah,
Yeah.
What
So
were you
all
guys at Two Poods Peak? What were you guys doing top line revenue?
So
If I mean, obviously you don't have to
I'm going to answer
yeah.
it. But so Tony Zana is in-house counsel for Intragraph. It is a $20 billion company.
Yeah, and he was your co-founder.
Yeah. So he had a full-time job. He's also a professional Catholic. He had 6 kids. Tony might have more kids than that now. I'm going to text him after this podcast. Hey, dude, how many kids you got now? But so that was his full-time job. And my full-time job was Killcliff because that's where the money was. But like Two Pood invested in Killcliff when we did our seed round. We invested in the A round. So all our top line revenue and like, I feel terrible saying this because I made a bunch of money when we sold it, but like, dude, I was putting 20 minutes a month into that company.
Yeah.
I didn't care because I was like, this is a dumb name. No one's ever going to buy it. So I think the most we ever did was like 1.4, 1.6 million,
Okay.
and that was like out of like a garage.
Yeah.
It never really got the time or energy that it needed.
Were you guys profitable? Like,
Oh, yeah.
What were you able to sell it for?
Right at $1 million.
Okay. And what EBITDA multiple was that? Like, how much profit were you making?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
That's not something I don't pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Where did the name come from? Because
Kettlebell.
Yeah, it's like the 2 pood weight of a kettlebell.
72 pounds. It's a Russian unit of measurement.
Yeah.
Okay, I have.
Yeah,
that.
1.5 pood, 2 pood. Yeah, so I mean
Gotcha.
it's clever, but yeah, it's
Stupid.
Yeah,
Incredibly stupid
Yeah.
name. So
I have actually a funny story. It was either you or your founder because we were similar. Upbringings with Born Primitive. We started in 2014, and same idea. Mal and I went to just every CrossFit event and selling it out of the Jeep. Eventually, we got a tent, which was super high speed, and thought we were the
10 by 10, man.
Yeah, exactly. 10 by 10 tent.
They bleach real fast. They go from black to
we
brown.
were at the Atlanta regional, which was what was that, the southeast. It was in Atlanta.
Okay.
And Mal and I were working the booth, and we went to dinner. So it was either you or your co-founder. I'm going to put you on blast here, but obviously it's all good now. It's funny. We went to dinner with Killcliff crew. They invited us, and then there was Two Pood was there. It was either I can't remember. It was either you or your founder.
Tim Donegan. He's an employee.
We were, by that time, I think this was 2017, 2016. So we weren't like in the CrossFit scene. We were very known. Like, you know what I mean? It's like we were this big brand, but we were at everything, and we were at dinner. And whoever was from your camp at dinner, Killcliff introduced Mal and I. Oh, they're the founders of Born Primitive, and like the guy said something to the effect of like, "Oh, I've never fucking heard of it." And I looked at Mal across the table because she knows how competitive I am.
Right.
I mean, what you see is what you get with me. And I whoever it was, I wanted to freaking bull rush this guy because I was like, all right, who the F is this guy to say that to me? You know what I mean? But it was like it was said in a bit of a condescending tone. I don't think it was intentional, but for me. So I've always been a guy that, I love that bulletin board material. Like if you go in my office now, you'll see I have shit pinned up on the wall that is old emails that I've printed, media clips that are now printed. I mean, Tony, I love that shit because that puts a chip on my shoulder. And I was like, all right. So I remember after dinner and I was like, I'm going to fucking show those guys.
I need an enemy.
Yes,
give me a reason to hate you.
Exactly.
Give
so
me a
I
reason
was like, oh, they don't know our fucking name. Well, give me 2 years.
Yeah.
They will fucking know our name.
That definitely wasn't me.
Mal just knows that's me being me, right?
Yeah.
I always harnessed that and used it. But yeah, it was funny. And we were like, you guys were like 2 booths down.
Yeah.
Because we were there. But
the interesting thing about what turned the corner for Two Pood was like, I had just driven from like the games in 2012 to was going to Atlanta, and I remember stopping in Huntsville. That's where Tony lived. That's where Two Pood's headquarters, his garage. And like my lower back was just shot. Been standing on concrete for 2 weeks straight,
I know the drill.
It's so bad. And he's like, yeah, man. He's like, Jay sent this silly belt, and I was like, let me see that thing. And it was the Metcon belt, and I put it on, and it just stood me up, and I was like, this is coming home with me. And I remember I drove home with it on because it just totally helped my lower back. And from that moment on, that's when the pivot started with Two Pood going from shorts
to belts.
to the belts.
Yeah.
And the belts did really, really well.
Yeah.
That was what made the company.
Yeah.
Killcliff.
So you sold it 2018, got $1 million for it.
Yeah.
And then, obviously you guys had invested in Killcliff, which was
I got the stock.
Which was that was an endemic brand of CrossFit. I mean, you guys were about as OG as it gets.
Yeah, but Killcliff wasn't really doing well.
Okay.
at the time.
What was the OG drink of Killcliff? Like, what were the first couple
The
products?
first
It was the
flavor,
orange.
it was blood orange.
Yeah.
Okay, that was the first.
Yeah.
That was the OG.
Yeah, blood orange.
Speaking
And
of,
that is
That's the blood out. That's
that's
the
the
elk blood.
Cam Haines. So Joe
Yeah.
Rogan's actually Joe owns 20% of Killcliff.
oh, he does.
Yeah,
Joe does.
Yeah. That can in your hand right there is elk blood. That's Joe Rogan and Cam Haines.
Spicy cherry.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
talked
delicious.
Can
about
you
it,
guys stop doing spicy? Can you just do cherry?
I'm with you.
There's like a spicy pineapple. Like I don't like
That's
spicy.
ju-
Those are all the
Listen,
Rogan ones.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Can you tell Joe to cool it a little bit?
I'm with you, but what Joe gets, Joe wants.
I
I mean,
know.
whatever he asked for. They had just shot an elk. They had literally just shot an elk out
Yeah.
in Trinchera or Tejon. And he shot over at Texas like, hey, man, Cam and I want to do a flavor. We want to call it elk blood. And we were like, absolutely. Dumbest idea I've ever heard of. Sure, we'll do it, you know? But so I was Killcliff full time. And like, I don't take credit for a lot of stuff. Like, I'm a team player. And I'm not a founder. I'm a co-founder, and I'm a cog in a wheel that can handle the weight. I'm a spoke in a wheel that can handle the weight of 4 spokes, 5, 6 spokes. And I wear a lot. I'm a 5-tool player, like in baseball, like someone that can run, hit, field, everything. Like that's kind of the way I view myself. I do take credit for Killcliff's success in the early days. Like we went from $0 in revenue, had a warehouse with 8,000 cases, something like that, no money in the bank, and no plan. And I got involved, and I just started pushing it in the CrossFit space. And we went from 0 to 16 million in about 3 years. And I remember, I was at my mother's house in Savannah. I got a call from like one of our first auto subscribers. He's like, "Hey Baker, what's up?" And I was like, "Oh hell yeah, man! This guy's gonna place another order." Because we back then in the early days we were manually entering orders. Because I was like, you're closing deals,
Yeah.
sales. Like every time you did that, dude, like yeah, I'll do it for you. To hell with automation. Like we want to enter it ourselves because it's rewarding. It's like getting a math problem right. He's like, yeah. He's like, we're really interested in Killcliff. And I was like, when did you learn French? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, you just said we. Who's we? And he was like, yeah, my company. I was like, who's that? He's like, Tyson Foods. And I was like, excuse me? What are you talking about? It's like, yeah. What Tyson Foods, and at this point we needed to raise money because we were going into like retail.
Yeah.
Going into retail costs money.
Yeah.
And what Tyson Foods had done, they had saturated the protein space. They could only grow their bottom line by a fraction of a percent of a percent. And so what they started doing was going around and buying up startups that had been a little bit, it's like A-round companies, not B-round, small companies.
Mhm.
And then they would acquire them or acquire a percentage of them. And then overnight they could send an email to all their distributors.
Immediately.
Nationwide,
Yeah.
coast to coast, every grocery store in the country. And so we were talking to Tyson. They flew us out to Northwest Arkansas, had a meeting in their big boardroom, and they loved us. And we were also a company out of Boston called Sherbrooke, which is another VC firm. To hell with those guys. But anyway, we ended up going with Sherbrooke because
Ooh. Plot twist.
Tyson Foods' due diligence. Tyson Foods that year did $36 billion in sales.
Yeah.
Their due diligence would have shut our little company down. Not on purpose, just the amount of information that they would have required. And like, we were like, oh, we'll go with these guys. They're from Boston. They're super cool. They love us. John Giannuzzi does CrossFit.
And do they kind of promise like a more chill due diligence? Like, oh, we'll just kind of, we'll dig into the financials a little bit, or not even any?
Just very, very small.
Okay.
Like virtually zero. Like these are the guys we want to go with.
Okay.
And so for people listening, what VC firms, this is my opinion of a VC firm. VC firms are normally this is on paper, highly educated guys with amazing resumes. Not knocking on Ivy Leagues, but Ivy League guys, Ivy League grad degrees, like these resumes, huge success stories in business, these massive careers. And they have an insane amount of cash because people give them money, they invest. So they had done up to that point 12 acquisitions between $3 and $8 million and exited 3 to 5 years later between 80 and 240 million. And we were like, hell yeah, we're in.
Yep.
What they don't tell you is that they think you're stupid and they don't think you know anything. And they think they're smarter than you and they think they can do anything that you do better. And that causes a massive problem because there's a gap between startup brand affinity. People just love your brand. And then you turn a corner in revenue where your founders aren't necessarily capable of understanding high-level complex finance and distribution and logistics and all that stuff. And you have to transition to giving people that you don't necessarily know a lot of control in your company. Now, between A and B, there's a gap.
And what,
Okay.
And what stake did they take?
How much did they take? What were the numbers, if you're able to share it?
30%.
Okay, about 30%. And what valuation did you guys get?
I've never asked that question. I know that. I know that now because I raised money for startups.
Yeah.
But back then, I put trust in people that are on my team to do their job, and there's no mission creep with me.
Other guys at Killcliff were taking care of that.
Yeah, Todd's a stud.
Okay, so they got 30%.
I think it was 30, maybe it was 40.
Okay,
something like that.
So they got a minority stake,
and they got 2 board seats
out of 5,
6.
Okay, got it.
2.
All right. So they can't control
yet.
Okay,
we're getting there.
All right,
we're gonna get there.
All right.
So
what happened?
So there's a gap between startup and big boy business, and what happens in that gap, it's a transition space, I call it a gap, is when your company is going to make it or break it. Because sometimes you have founders that think they're too damn smart and they won't give up control. And then or if you have the wrong guys in on your big boy business side, that it gets dicey. So we went with those guys, and they did the whole like spin. I call it West Coast offense business. West Coast offense teams, West Coast football teams don't play defense.
Yep.
Get revenue as high as you can.
Yep. Top line at all costs.
Who cares if you're losing money? And I remember they told Todd's like, I don't want to do this. Like we shouldn't be doing these things. He's like, you're gonna spend this money to drive revenue, or we're gonna find someone that will. He's like, all right. So we started doing a bunch of dumb stuff with money.
And was Todd acting as the CFO?
Todd was the CEO.
CEO.
Todd was the SEAL.
Yeah.
SEAL teammate guy. Got out in 1998. And when you run out of money, we're going to put more money in. But they don't tell you got to give up equity.
Of course you do. Yeah.
But they don't say that. They're like, oh, no, we're like, and so they.
Man, y'all were green, man.
Man.
Holy shit.
Oh, yeah. What? But at the time, like, who did we have to talk to?
Yeah.
About our experiences. We didn't know shit, man. So they eventually, we had to raise like another like $5 million. They got some more, they put in more money, got another board seat. Now they got 3. Todd's got 3, they've got 3. And then they burned through that money, and then we needed another $5 million. And they made Todd give up a seat, or they told Todd, this guy was like, I'll put in $5 million. He wasn't attached to them. I'll put in $5 million, but you got to give me a board seat. Okay. So now Todd has 2 board seats, and he thinks he's got this 3rd board seat is loyal to him because it's Todd's contact. Sherbrooke got to this guy, painted a horrible picture. They voted Todd out. All right. So,
and what percentage of the company is now owned by other entities? It's probably 60 or 70% at this point.
I think it was like 50.
Okay.
Maybe something like that.
I'm not sure. It was over 50.
Yeah. So they brought in a CEO that didn't last very long. They brought in another CEO who was from Minnesota, who was woke before woke was a word.
Jeez.
No, I'm serious, man. Like, because I was like, who? Like,
what year was this?
2015.
Okay.
And so you have, I work for I find someone that like I admire and I respect, and I'll go to work for them. Like that's what happened with Evan Hafer at Black Rifle, and that was my thing with Todd, because like I don't ever want to disappoint those people. If I were to disappoint Evan Hafer, I wouldn't sleep. If I were to disappoint Todd, I wouldn't be able to sleep. So, and like, this is going to sound weird and kind of hicky and meatheady, but like, if you've never been punched in the face or punched someone in the face or been in a fight, you're not a man, you're like a dude. Like I have a hard time, like kind of respecting you. Like if you're just some, whatever. But so I went from having a scrappy SEAL as my boss to this woke bird brain. And I mean that, bird brain. And everything everyone started leaving and was gone. I was the last person of the original group that was there. And so on December the 30th, 2017, I made a post. It was a Sunday, 30th, 31st. I made a post on a Sunday, and I called all of our athletes that we work with, and I was like, "Hey, I'm going to post a carousel of tight shots on your butt at the games." So there's a bunch of butts in the Reebok CrossFit logo. Great, fantastic post. Because that's what CrossFit girls are about. Like, they want great butts. They want a great ass. Like, that's not a secret. And some clown who went to UT Chattanooga, 22-year-old, like, woke individual, sent an email to customer service. And the CEO, like, lost his mind. Like, how dare you make that post? And I was like, what are you talking about? That's a fantastic. It was like 5,400 comments. Like, I'd name that butt. Whose butt is this? And like had the carousel, and like people were going crazy.
Oh man,
it was an awesome post, and like even the athletes were in it commenting and stuff.
Guess that butt.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah,
post.
HR's calling. Oh man.
Yeah.
And
I was just like, man, to hell with you. I quit because like the week before, Athena, she said, Baker, here's what your problem is. You've been here 2 years too long, and you haven't grown. And also, like, I'd been doing some consulting stuff for some companies because, like, the way we grew Killcliff and the timing was beautiful. It's early days of social media. And, like, your reach was like 100% of your followers.
Mm-hmm.
And I got really good at it because, like, when I was growing up, this is before social media, and, like, every Saturday morning, dude, I'd get up and run down to the end of the driveway, get the newspaper to see if my name was in the paper for the night game, football game. Did I score a touchdown, run a punt back, and, like, was my picture there? And, like, I'd look, you know how it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my mindset with social media, was name in the paper. Coach Carter used to say that, get your name in the paper, intercept the ball, whatever. And companies had started reaching out to me. And so I remember I'd been doing some consulting work for Black Rifle, and I called Evan and I was like, hey dude, I need you to give me some advice. I'm leaving Killcliff. Just give me one piece of advice. And it was like 10:06 on the morning of January 3rd. I lived in Washington State at the time. I was standing out in the road. He goes, you need to be more diplomatic with how you deal with people. And I was like, you're an idiot. I'm not listening. I'm just kidding. I didn't say that. I was like, all right, man, I'll take that to heart. And that's when I started my consulting company, Digital Mongoose, and like off to the races.
All right. So you left Killcliff, and fast forward a little bit, you guys ended up buying it back. So
we sold it again.
What's that?
First VC, we sold it to the first VC firm in like 2014.
These are the Boston guys.
Yeah.
They eventually took 60 to 70% ish. Everyone left.
Burned through cash. We sold it to a company out of Denver called Sunrise.
100%. You sold the whole thing?
No, just sold a massive chunk.
Okay. Well, there's not that much left.
Well, they had to restructure it.
Okay.
So everyone had to give up a ton of equity.
So at this point, you and Todd and these guys own a sliver of the company.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to say it at this point anymore. Okay.
The greatest thing I've ever done in my life was not bad mouthing that company publicly, keeping my mouth shut.
Yeah.
Being a mature adult.
Yeah.
Because like you don't understand, man. I wanted to burn it to the ground.
Yeah.
And I kept my mouth shut. And then I started my consulting company, and they ended up reaching out to me in like 2019 to help with some social media stuff.
Killcliff did?
Yeah.
And
begrudgingly.
What was the peak top line revenue? Like, what was the heyday of Killcliff?
27 million.
27 million. And what
But
year?
It was hold on.
What year was that?
God, the past few years.
Okay.
Yeah. 23, 27.
Okay.
But it was hemorrhaging cash.
Yeah.
Hemorrhaging cash.
And the margin is probably not great.
Good margin.
But you're selling to retail.
Most of the revenue was direct to consumer. And that is
why. This is recently?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's why it was so appealing to Tyson Foods and other companies, was because, and for those listening, whenever you have a company that does a ton of D2C business, that makes you super attractive to big boys because they don't know how to do D2C. The smartest people in this country, in the finance world, don't understand people, and they can't do direct to consumer. All they understand is retail.
Yep.
Why are you smiling and laughing?
I'm smiling because we're going to weaponize that exact thing here at Born Primitive, because I know that that D2C is a much harder thing, and so we're starting to go after big box retail as we speak, and that's exactly it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but if you have I think that Black Rifle, right before we went public, I think like it was like 90% direct to consumer.
Yeah.
No, not maybe a year or two before we went public. It was massive direct to consumer. Killcliff was massive direct to consumer because like Coke, Pepsi, those types of companies, it's like, wait a minute, these guys are in like 6,000 CrossFit gyms. We don't know how to get our products into CrossFit gyms.
So just
however,
let's buy it.
we can send an email and get them in every grocery store in the country. So that's the whole point. Like for entrepreneurs, stuff like that, do the things uncharacteristically well and do things that others can't do, and that was, so fast forward, I'm at Black Rifle. I'm a director of strategic relations. I've got my consulting business is crushing it. And,
where did that relationship initially start with Evan? How did you link up with
so
those
I was
guys
sitting on my couch, in Washington State and my phone rang. I got a text from a guy named Brant that owned a company called Two Vets Arms. He's like, I'm going to introduce you to one of these guys at Article 15, Jared Taylor. I was like, cool. So JT calls me. He's like, hey, we're doing this movie called Range 15. And we want Killcliff to be a sponsor. I said, how much? He said, 50,000. I was like, hold on. I called Todd. I was like, dude, like these guys are super badass. They're super entertaining. They want us to sponsor their movie. He's like, how much? I was like, 50 grand. He's like, we're in. That's how that relationship started.
Gotcha.
And I just kind of hit it off with those guys, and they were great. But so my consulting company's kicking ass, and Black Rifle's going really, really well. And I remember they had kind of started putting out feelers about buying Killcliff. They were trying to sell it and unload it. Sunrise.
And were they getting their asses handed to them? Like the strategy, was it tanking? Like
no, what was happening was Sunrise had a fund that had a bunch of brands in it.
Okay. And
they had exited all the other brands. And the only thing left in that fund was Killcliff. So they couldn't close that fund down until Killcliff was done. And then they just got sick of putting money into it.
Yeah.
And so I remember I got a call from Todd. He's like, hey man, I'm thinking about buying Killcliff back. And I was like, hell yeah, man. And we talked for probably, I think, 3 hours. And I was like, you never get a chance to undo a screw up. You know what I mean? Like you never, ever get a chance to absolutely royally mess something up, become 100 times smarter and more experienced, and then be like, hey man, it's like going back in time to when you're 18. What would you do differently? Oh my God. And I remember talking to Todd because like he and I, like we kind of kept in touch. We'd maybe text or comment on a social post like once every 6 months or something like that. Like we kind of grew apart. He was doing his thing, I was doing my thing. And I was just like, hey man, you just got to know this. I'm not the same person that I was. Like my toolbox is real big now. Back then, it was just a hardworking, bald-headed dude. But like, I'm different now. He's like, so am I.
Still bald though. But.
Absolutely. I've been bald. Dude, first day of summer camp, I remember taking my helmet off in college.
Oh God.
And I looked and I was like, man, my helmet's too small. I got full of hair. And I looked at my roommate, Mark Beeler, 6'5" offensive lineman, Greek dude. His hairline like literally starts right here.
Not right above his eyebrow.
Wasn't a hair in his helmet. And I was like, I think I'm going bald. 18 years old. But I was like, I'm in, Todd. You just got to promise me we're not going to screw up the way we did before. He's like, never. We'll never do it. We'll never make those mistakes again. And so it was last year at Sornex's Winter Strong.
Mm-hmm.
It was Friday. His phone rang. He goes, it's done. I was like, hell yes, it's on.
What were you able to get it for? If you don't mind, you able to answer that?
A song and a dance.
So you got it on the cheap.
One of those
like
things
under
like
under $5 million.
Yes.
Okay. That's on the
like,
cheap.
It was throwing
They need to get rid of it.
Yeah, dispose of the asset.
Yeah.
Throwing out a number that's so ridiculously low.
Wow.
And they're like, yeah, we'll take it. And you're just like,
wow.
Why didn't I go lower?
Yeah.
By the way, like,
okay.
do you have $3 million? I was like, let me make some calls, but it was they were hemorrhaging like $700,000 a month. This is the one thing that will define, put it into perspective for you. They were spending $2,500 a month on email addresses that hadn't been active in 4 years.
Yep.
And to people listening, company doing $25 million in revenue, that doesn't sound like a lot of money. Get 10 of those, $25,000 a month. throwing a few $8,000 here, a $5,000 monthly expense here, you can see how like those are budget busters. Those are the little things that just add up and add up and add up. So it's profitable now, which is fantastic. We did that in 3 months.
And I think that's been the blessing with Born Primitive is since we never raised money, we always had to be super efficient with our expenses, where it's like a lot of these people we compete with that, again, it was raise top line revenue at all costs.
West Coast
right?
offense, man.
Some PE firm gives you $30 million. Yes, before you know it, you're doing all these dumb things. Oh, it's only 10 grand. Yeah, let's do that fancy lunch, or let's do this and that. You know what I mean? And it adds up. It's death by 1,000 cuts. I think that's a disadvantage. I think the most lethal combo, hopefully, will be if we do an investment in a couple of years, we're gonna get all that money to grow the business, but we're going to still have the scrappy underdog mentality mindset of making every freaking penny count. And to me, that's a dangerous freaking combo. You know what I mean? Whereas, some of these brands we competed with, and I applaud the game because, I mean, it is the game, but they've been raising capital literally from the beginning. So they've never actually had to use their own money ever. And when it's not your own money, it matters less because you just know. Because there was a time where you didn't even have to be profitable. It was raised, top line revenue at all costs, so how much, your total sales, not the bottom line, your profit. And let's just get to the next 3 to 5 year raise. We'll cash out again. And then the next idiot's going to come in and invest, right? Because he thinks it's eventually going to be profitable. And it's just on this prediction that eventually you're going to be profitable. Unfortunately, now we're learning that a lot of these predictions are not coming true. And that race to top line revenue, it's getting reset because now investors are saying, all right, we got duped in the 2018 to 2022 window.
Every 10 years. That's
right?
It's a 10-year mark.
So now when you raise money, it's like, okay, you have to actually show profitability, and it can't be like, oh, we lost $8 million last year, but in 8 years we're going to make $50 million. Look at our this really fancy model that a Harvard MBA made that doesn't work anymore.
It doesn't understand startup.
So it's awesome you guys were able to get in there right away and immediately identify, just trim fat, like all this dumb stuff you're spending. The inactive email is the great one. Like, how could you? I mean, they should have seen that. Like,
too busy to look at the little small stuff
Yeah.
like that. But like that was another thing. Like I learned a valuable lesson in smart money, dumb money. Like raising money is really, really easy. It is super easy. What's hard is getting smart money, finding the right partners and the right money. You don't the last thing in the world you want is some rich dude that's investing in your brand because the cool name and you were a SEAL.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, man, my partner's a SEAL. And then he sits at your board meetings like this with his hand out. When do I get my money back? But he doesn't offer anything. It's one thing to like ask questions about like, when you get your money back. But if you're not bringing in anything to the table, like raising smart money and putting the right people on your board, that's all that matters. Nothing else matters.
And how did the Rogan connection come in?
Man, so Joe Rogan loved Tupood. All right. He was a big Tupood fan. And I remember like he would make posts and like Tony and I'd be like, oh my God, Joe Rogan's wearing our stuff. And I had his address. So I would just send him stuff. And then we brought Andy Stump on board. So Andy was a former SEAL, Gold Squad guy. And Andy ended up on Joe Rogan's podcast. And we brought John Dudley on, who taught Joe Rogan archery. And then the same thing, like you go over to Black Rifle, who were two of their sponsored people, Andy Stump and John Dudley. So I've always tried to find who controls the microphone. Who's like, so like every time I'd go to a CrossFit event, I'd become friends with the announcers and the MCs and the color people. And I would make sure that my reps constantly had them kill cliff to drink, holding their hands, whatever. And that's the thing with Rogan was like just sending him stuff, and eventually you hope that maybe he'll open the package and like what's in it. And it just kind of turned into something. So pre us buying it back, he owned a minority, very, very like 5%. And now he's all about it. He's all in. He loves the product. We've done 2 drinks specifically for him that he's formulated and all that stuff. And he's an awesome partner. Awesome partner. You would think that it's like the guy that you see or listen to on the podcast, that's the guy, it's him in real life, man. Like he's just He's awesome, and he's a great decision. That was a no brainer, getting him involved.
And did you see an instant, like they call it the Rogan effect? Did you guys see that right away?
So Evan has always referred to Joe Rogan as a kingmaker. So there's organic stuff with Rogan, absolutely. Paid stuff doesn't really work that well, but organic stuff, product placement, like him wearing, there's a post that he's wearing a Black Rifle shirt, or he has the Rock one, and he's like, "You want a Kill Cliff?" And Rock's like, "Yeah, man." What is this? He's like, "This is my drink, spicy pineapple." And then Rock's like, "That was my nickname in high school." Little things like that, man. That, it's like 4 million impressions.
Yeah,
which aren't necessarily the greatest thing in the world, but they make for a cool story.
Well, it's just crazy how we always talk about how that world has changed. Where like 2008, if you had Rogan, if you could do a paid digital ad with him, it would have crushed. Whereas now people's brains like just turn that off, regardless of who it is. It's very hard. Like the whole famous person effect isn't as real.
The
anymore.
reason for that,
yeah.
Well, you can saturate a customer base or a follower base in 30 days.
Yeah.
So if you look at companies that like have these long-term relationships with these influencers, which is such an insulting term, but it doesn't do anything for brands anymore. Oh yeah, he's been with us for 5 years. Do you think anyone that follows him gives a shit? No. So I think you'll start seeing a seasonality stuff with people. Like, hey man, instead of us paying you, hypothetically, let's say, instead of us paying you like $2,500 a month, which comes out to what, $30,000 a year? We're going to do 2 things with you and spend $20,000 on each thing and just go nuts for 30 days.
Yep.
And then you're not responsible for making stupid non-organic posts every month to hit your deliverables. So we're transitioning from the creator economy where everyone wants to be an influencer and everyone's posting and everyone thinks they're a content creator and making a podcast to the curator economy. Now, what's the difference here? You're subscribed to 12 podcasts, you follow 10,000 people, and you see the same shit and listen to the same shit every day. Transitioning into the curator economy, you're only listening to 2 podcasts, maybe 1.5, and you're not paying attention to what randos are just posting. What's the value proposition for the consumer? Why am I following you? Why am I opening your email?
Yeah.
What's in it for me? Mm-hmm. And that's, if as a business owner or entrepreneur, people thinking about starting a business, like, it's very, very important that you're providing a value to your customer or your potential customer versus just carpet bombing social with a bunch, because you can turn people off with that, you know?
Yeah. No, absolutely. So you got Joe 20% now. Mm-hmm. Kill Cliff's back on the right track.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I saw it evolve over time, mm-hmm. right? And you guys were an endemic brand to CrossFit, and then you left. It was like you
VC.
You had this foothold, right? And it's like you literally had the high ground.
Gave it up to Fit. It's
like you literally just gave up the high ground.
Gave it to Fit.
And then they
augured in.
They kicked your all's ass.
Yeah, and they augured in too.
Yeah. And then,
but that was the VC thing. We're too heavy in CrossFit. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
No.
And I think that's where the suits end up screwing everything up.
Yeah, but you think about a tree.
Yeah.
All right. It's massive 100-year-old oak tree. What's the most important component to that oak tree? Its root system. Period. The crown and the bowl and the DBH and all that stuff does not matter. What matters is the roots. And the moment that you ignore that, that's when your tree starts to die. And that's what happened. They're like, oh, Kill Cliff's too heavy in CrossFit. It's like, that's the entire D2C like arm of the company. What do you mean? Like, well, we need to find other sports. So I remember one time they suggested fencing and squash.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Yes.
You know what squash is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of insane.
Well, I think if you want some unsolicited advice that you didn't ask for, I was at Red Bull for 4 years, actually 7 if you count college. And
fascinating story. Fascinating brand.
I think something that you guys could really lean into, just as because since I am a consumer, right? So I have a different lens I see it through, but having a beverage background is like, you guys, kind of adopted a very kind of silly, carefree, like, cats with lasers, like. It's
so stupid. That was the SEAL did that. That's Todd.
Okay. Well, hey,
I'm saying that because you're a SEAL.
But at the end of the day, you guys are positioning yourselves as like a recovery drink, mm-hmm. right? And it's so important, in my opinion, to carry credibility from a recovery standpoint. Like, you have to not be silly for a minute and actually explain what are the actual ingredients and what does each one benefit to. And I don't I'm telling you, just as a friend, as a consumer, you guys have a great brand, a great product, but I think you could lean more into hey, here's how this actually works. This is how it's formulated. And that's why with Red Bull, we would always try to do it. Be like, hey, the B vitamins are for this. We would break out the ingredients. And even though you think it's just some energy drink where it's like a bunch of dudes jumping out of planes, it's like, no, there's actually, let's break this out for you, why it's going to give you energy. And we always like would make the team that was sampling always deliver that. And maybe you guys are doing it more, but
there's a huge transition in society. Like, so what I refer to that as human performance. So people are drinking a lot less. They're paying way more attention to, a lot of people are, much less alcohol is being consumed in today's day and age. They're paying attention to, like, there's a lot of stuff out there that you can do that doesn't necessarily, like the thing with CrossFit is the barrier to entry was always hard work. There's no easy CrossFit workouts. They all suck. But like there's things you can do now where you don't have to kill yourself, red light therapy, cold plunge, sauna, all this stuff. And so there's a huge transition into the human performance realm. So I completely agree with you 100%. And that is something we are going to be focusing on. Because like these cans, like, I don't know what that is, man.
There's a lot going
it's
on.
Obviously,
what is that?
This is I'm holding up the elk blood, which is good. But yeah, it doesn't lend itself to
education at all.
This is a health product, right?
Right.
Now you don't have to like make it look medical, but at the same time, if you have, I just think you guys could really lean more in. Hey, we do have humor. We're kind of witty and like we have fun. However, let's be serious for a second. Here are the reasons you should drink this product, and here's how it will help you recover at a physiological level. I think that's long overdue. And for a while, it didn't matter. No. You guys had the brand. It was like, oh, if you were in CrossFit in the early days, it was fashionable to have a Kill Cliff after your workout, right? You know what I mean? You'd be in the cool down area, and we'd all be drinking the orange Kill Cliff. It didn't like we didn't give a shit what was in it. Right. It said recovery drink. It was it one or not? We didn't care. It was just a justification to
no questions.
You know what I mean? But now, to your point. So again, that's unsolicited.
So let me see
advice.
this can.
Yeah.
So this can. The thing about me that jumps out about this is like, if this is someone's like first interaction with the brand, what is that? It's like a haunted house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like the CBD, like, what is the purpose of CBD? So that, that is something we're absolutely focusing on. And it's funny you mentioned that because when a VC firm comes into your business, all right, they don't know this is the transition phase, the little transition block I was talking about. They don't understand brand loyalty and things like that. So the first thing they're going to do is they're going to hire some of their marketing buddies from their previous company. Mm-hmm. All right. And here's what they're going to do. One of three things. And anyone listening, please shoot me a message on Instagram. Give me an example if you've ever seen this, but this is what they do. Repackaging, new products, product design, rebranding. One of those three things. And you know why they do that? It's like restarting your computer when you talk to the Apple guy. Restarting your computer doesn't do anything, but what it does is it buys them time. Oh yeah, we're going to work on the packaging. We're going to come up with some new products. We're going to do rebranding and stuff. All that is just slowing down the game so they can try and figure out what they're doing. Like, I don't know how this works, but let's do this. It'll buy us time. And that's a byproduct of like, the original can was the white one with the logo. It was an awesome can. Why would they change it? The can they replaced it with now is hideous.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're getting back to all that stuff. Like it took us a year to get it to where it is right now. And like, we're in a great spot. And so that's stuff that we're working on now is making some of those changes.
So the question is, what do you think the CrossFit community will take y'all back?
We do a ton of business in the CrossFit space.
Yeah. Because I remember you had like an ad in the morning chalk up, and the headline was literally, "We are back in CrossFit." Like it was from you guys. And I was like, well, you can say it, but like, let's see if it, you know what I mean? Well, but I think there's enough OGs still that do it that like, I know I'm taking you guys, you know what I mean? I never stopped drinking.
So it's interesting. Yeah. Like you're talking about like the meeting with Tupud where the guy was like, "I've never heard of you." So Killcliff, we were always like the biggest in the CrossFit space.
Yeah.
And our place in the CrossFit space has been taken over by FitAid.
Yeah.
I don't like being an underdog, and I don't like people that are inferior to me being in a position above me. Like my entire life, I've always been like, I'm a starter, whatever's going on. I deserve to be in the room. I deserve to be on the field, whatever, except when I was playing college football, I didn't deserve to be on the field. But this is new territory for me because I'm like, oh, wait a minute. You're my enemy now. You were like this little tiny, like flea-ridden lapdog, and now I've got something to shoot for. So what have they done? What have you done, FitAid? What have they done that we can do bigger, better?
Yeah.
What works for them? Well, I can do it 10x. I mean, So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Like life is this constant evolution of of just like, and that's the cool thing about getting older, man, is the older you get, the wiser you get. You know, it's been fascinating. It's been a great run.
What's the breakdown now of sales, direct to consumer versus retail? Do you guys still have a retail presence, or did that get pulled back?
Anything that doesn't make money, we're not doing. So there's no more just because. Oh, why are we doing this? Oh, we've always have. Not anymore. So everything gets looked at. Everything. And if it doesn't make sense, and if it can't be justified, why are we doing it? If you can't answer that question in 2 sentences, you should be able to tell an entire story in 2 sentences. We won't do it.
I'm going to put you on the spot for one last question, since you are a consultant. If me and Tony and Mal and my brother Mike were trying to build the dream team from a board of advisors in 2 years, who are you putting on this dream team from the people you know? Help me assemble. We're in the room right now. We got this big boardroom table.
How many seats?
Who? Let's say I'll give you 7 seats.
Are you on one of those 7 seats?
No, that's beyond my people.
Okay, so you you're a Yale graduate, I would not. I know-ish what your revenue is. So you do need. So the first person I'd call would be Andrew Pouch. Andrew Pouch is one of the co-founders of Protect. Andrew went to the Naval Academy. He's like 6'4", real skinny, Ukrainian dude. Raised in a traditional Ukrainian home, rode for the Naval Academy, went through BUDS, got seriously injured, and it was an EOD guy. Okay. Then he got Harvard MBA. He's the most calm, cool, collected dude that I know, and I'm an investor in Protect. I also raised millions of dollars for them, but Andrew's highest and best skill set is evaluating numbers. And he doesn't know what he doesn't know, so he asks a lot of questions.
I got to speed you up because we're coming up on the deadline.
Okay, so
all right, there's one.
Andrew Pouch is one. Right. I would talk to, if you could get him to come to the meetings, Evan Hafer would be a really good one.
Yeah.
Then I would probably, Michael Thompson, who was my college roommate, who ran a hedge fund in New York City for many, many years. Let's see, who is some other people on the board that are going to deliver?
We're at 3. We got to get to 7.
I got to get to 7. I'd put me on there.
Okay.
Just because I'm going to look at things like no one else does. Because I look at everything I do through other people's shoes. I literally put myself in their seat. And I got 4. I'm at 4 now?
Mm-hmm.
I need 3 more?
3 more.
I'd probably call Sean Lake, the founder of Bubs Naturals.
Okay.
Sean's
I know.
Really, really impressive guy.
Him.
Former professional snowboarder. Damn it, dude. Like, I know I can rattle these things off so fast. I would. And are you raising money?
Yep.
Michael Blankvist from Midland, Texas. They have the largest Royal Bank of Canada office in the United States of America. They have $4 billion under management.
Okay.
I put Blankvist in there, and then I would probably grab someone from the nonprofit world.
Okay.
Maybe John Hughes or Shelley Kirkland. If Matt Best, Evan or Matt, that's 1 seat. One of those 2 guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's 7, right?
Yeah.
And like, I'm not going to stop thinking about this. When I land tonight, I'll be like, hey, dude, I've changed my mind. These are the 7 people I want.
See what I did there, Tone? I just got free advice.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't throw that in the invoice, okay?
The only thing that matters is that the people you put in those seats are there for the right reason. Like, so like if you look at like Matt Best, for example, or Evan, like they're richer than shit. All right. They're 1 and 2 on the publicly traded company. They're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. They don't do things for money anymore.
Yeah.
So they're there and it's like, here's all the things that Black Rifle did right. And then they'll go over the laundry list of stuff we screwed up. So there's a huge value there. I'd probably try. I would find a someone that comes from like a high level marketing background that has done stuff like on a global scale. However, the caveat would be they have to have worked for 5 years in a startup.
Yeah,
and it could have failed though, and preferably a startup that failed.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like Peter Rahal, founder of RX Bars. No brainer. Get Peter on there. 100%.
Well, yeah, they had a crazy exit. Yeah,
600 million in Nestle's, man. He started that.
Is that what it was?
Oh yeah.
We would run into each other at events, at
Whoa.
CrossFit
Yes.
events, and I'm like, all of a sudden I'm like, they got acquired by like Kellogg or whatever, Nestle,
Yeah.
and it was like, yeah, it was
600
insane.
million.
and
Never
yeah.
took on $1 in outside money.
Yeah.
Him and his brother didn't. His mom's. The thing that one of the biggest compliments I've ever received was when John Timor, who was the CEO of Killcliff before we brought it back. He was a SEAL Team 8 guy, or maybe 4 or 8. I get those confused. He was talking to Peter Rahal trying to raise money, and Peter goes, "Whatever you do, whatever y'all decide, you have to bring Baker Leavitt back." And I was like, "No shit, man. That's from coming from a guy like that. That's great. I'd put Peter on there for sure. I'd beat him to death getting him on the board."
Okay.
I'm not gonna stop thinking about this. It's gonna drive me crazy.
Well, that moment is going to be coming eventually. So, we're probably 2 to 3 year mark. We're gonna take this thing to the next level. So,
and I could give you 24 types of people that you don't want on your board.
yeah. Well, I think I have a good idea of those, but obviously, I would love the sanity check on that for sure.
Yeah, you don't want anyone that's worth more than $250 million.
Yeah. Unless they started from nothing and built something like an Evan, obviously. Like,
Yeah.
he's a great. We had a great podcast the other day.
Yeah.
The
only problem with that is like making sure he shows up.
Yeah.
If you can get
that's
him to-
one of those things. You're like, all right, man, you're probably not going to come to all the board meetings. I get that, but
But they have to.
if I should,
that's the wrong guy then.
Yeah. Well,
if they
I know,
don't
I know.
show up.
No, I know.
Um,
I think if somebody like that made the commitment, I mean, it's just literally once a quarter for a few hours, so it's not the end of the world.
Andrew Pouch for sure. I'd put him on because Andrew's a super stud. He's such a stud. Really impressive guy. Very calm. Talks super slow, deep like this. Speaks Ukrainian. That's what I do.
All right. Well, I'll hold you to that.
God, this is going to drive me. This is
it's-
going to drive me insane.
It's our team of Avengers, man. We're going to be sitting. Well, we won't be sitting in this room. We're going to be at the new office by that time. But all right.
No tech people. No big tech people.
Yeah. We don't need that.
No West Coast tech guys.
We don't need
that
tech.
energy.
We don't need tech. Well, cool, man. Well, thanks for coming in. I know
I enjoyed
we
it.
got to talk some business after
Yeah.
this. I got to jump on a call here, but I'll come grab you before
Okay.
I got to head out.
right.
But I know you're going to integrate with the team and
Yep.
working some stuff. So thanks for coming in and sharing part of your story. Cool
We'll
to
do
see.
it again. We'll finish it up.
The best. Sometimes the best way to learn is the hard way, man. And it sounds like obviously you checked that box many times, and you're still just getting started. So
Oh yeah.
thanks for sharing some of that wisdom and knowledge and kind of the backstory of what you did. And also thanks for helping out with me and Born Primitive and just linking us up with the right people. And
You auctioned off that flying elk hunt.
yeah,
How much did you raise for it?
170 grand.
What did I tell you when you told me about it? So it was the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
What do you think now?
I
Still dumbest thing ever?
No.
Yeah.
For me,
Yeah.
I think I don't change my opinion on it. However, like that's just my opinion. That's 1 minute. It's I don't.
We're doing it to raise money for charity.
Yeah, you raised a
right?
bunch of money.
Yeah. So, that's, we'll be able to make a massive check for wildlife conservation and veteran charities. And we're going to try to do it every year at that auction. We want it to
awesome.
be like a Born Primitive Outdoors thing. Like we become known for that.
Well, then we have to you got to do it with Dallas Safari Club because if you think you raised a bunch of money at Western Hunt
we
Expo,
could. Yeah. No, I would love to explore
I
that.
think
If you have connections there, let me
Corey,
know.
the CEO and president, they auctioned off a hunt with Don Jr. I think it was $500,000.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean at Western Hunt,
There's some big
ones were going for north of 500 for sure. So
Which is awesome to watch people.
It's crazy.
Dude, go to Texas and get those oil and gas guys bidding against
Oh,
each
yeah.
other.
Well, it
Next
becomes
level.
a big flex.
It's
Yeah,
it's insane.
yeah.
It's insane.
No, it was a good time. I got shotgun. I had to go on stage with the auctioneer, John, and like he told me I wasn't gonna have to speak. And then like we had like a little highlight video we made that was like 60 seconds, and with like 20 seconds left, we're up on stage, and he hands me the mic. He's like, "All right, when this is done, just say something in the crowd." There's 2,500 people at this thing, and I'm like, John, like you told me I didn't have to say anything.
I'm just supposed to sit here and
So
look
by
good.
the time I get the microphone, the video is ending.
Your heart rate
And
spikes.
I went
doubles.
from like probably 80 to like 160. You know what I mean? I felt like Chris Farley in Black Sheep when he gets thrown out on stage.
Yeah,
That's awesome. That's great.
But no, it was good, and a couple Patriots bought it, and we're gonna show them a great time, and they can bring their whole family to the ranch while we're hunting and doing
That's
the
gonna
whole
be
thing.
awesome.
So, but yeah, man. Well, thank you so
All
much,
right, man.
and looking forward to keeping this thing rolling, man.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
All right.
Baker.
Later, guys.